All right. Welcome, everyone. Happy Friday. Um, let's see. This time, Sam Williams, founder of Arweave, retweeted about my stream. So whenever that happens, I expect this will get a few more views than usual. So I want to do a little intro, give a little context for what I'm doing. Although before I do that, let me just double check my audio. I like to make sure everything's working here. Okay, so just a little context on these streams. So I'm building a distributed mining pool for Arweave. Hopefully, as that develops, I'll build out some companion services that I have some ideas for that would run alongside that. So that's sort of my involvement in the Arweave community. I started doing these streams essentially as a substitute for pair programming. I used to do pair programming a decent amount in my prior job. And this is sort of, this is a way to get a similar thing where I'm doing things publicly and sharing with people. And, I think it helps sort of as a feedback mechanism and to, whenever you're doing things publicly, you tend to make sure you're doing them more correctly and looking into things a little more. So it's just kind of a tool for me to help keep me focused, with the added benefit that hopefully it provides some useful content for the Arweave community, gets more people interested in Arweave, and as a side benefit, draws more attention to things I'm working on in the long term. So that's sort of the context for these streams. Recently, so the bulk of the streams I've done have been basically live coding various things. For a while, I've been sticking on this theme of pulling Arweave data into XTDB, which is a Clojure programming language-based database, and doing interesting things with it, both exploring the database, Arweave, and Clojure together. So that's been the bulk of these streams. Recently, I've had the idea of doing some more I don't know, I guess you could say educational streams about Arweave. And in particular, I'm pretty interested in the tools for thought space and tools for collective intelligence. So that would be things like Rome research, Athens research, LogSeq, which is what you're looking at right here. Happens to be the tool I currently use. And I'm interested in these right now. I think you could categorize all of these as really fancy note-taking tools, maybe like small group collaboration tools. That is super interesting, and believe me, if you can crack the enterprise knowledge management space, that's like multi-billion-dollar problem to solve. So that's great. What really excites me about these tools in the long term is scaling them globally and in an open way. And I actually, prior to finding Arweave, didn't really. It was a question in my mind how you would do that, and I think Arweave, or anything that has the same properties as Arweave. I'm rooting for Arweave. I'm invested in Arweave, but ultimately, any system that realizes the same properties that Arweave seeks to realize, I think, is a key enabler to scaling these things globally. And I'm trying to explain that and make the case for that in these videos, and explore other areas of collective intelligence too. And one of the reasons I really care about this is that we live in a time where we have a lot of exponential technology, and I think well, first of all, I don't think you can stop technology, right? I don't think we're in a stable place as a civilization. If you stop right now, what you get is collapse. I'm pretty certain of that. So there's no let's pause stuff. No, we have to innovate our way out of it. Maybe pausing technology is never a thing you could actually do anyway, but right now it seems obvious to me that you can't just pause it. And when you have a bunch of exponential technologies that are being built, it's really important. It's really important that we build these things to get out of this sort of unstable equilibrium that we're in. But it's also important that you do them in the right order. And I think the more powerful tools we can build to coordinate ourselves in an open, non-coercive, collaborative way, the better chance we have of doing that well. And I think Arweave is a key enabler for that. So that's the really broad context. I hope to get into some of the more out there details of that in future videos at some point. I kind of just pop the stack on each of these, like whatever's next in my mind. That's the thing I'm going to focus on for the next video. So you'll see the what we're going to talk about shortly in this one. Let's see, anything else I should mention in the intro? Oh yes, so if you are building on top of Arweave or interested in Arweave, I'll mention that I think it's right after this. Let's see, does that actually work as a link? Yes. The Open Web Foundry is a sort of an incubator for Arweave projects. They're doing another round of that right now. So if that's a thing that interests you, I believe these are all open. I think they were last time. So, go join this if that's interesting to you and you're interested in seeing what's going on in the Arweave space, building on top of it. It's at 11 my time, the next hour after this. I'll probably go over, but these are recorded, and sometimes there's live interaction that happens in the Open Web Foundry talks that you might miss out on if you don't attend it live. So I do encourage folks who are interested in that to go do that when the time comes. I'll get all the sort of presentation part of this live stream out of the way before then anyway. So all you'll be missing out on is me hacking away on Clojure, which I think is interesting to some folks, but has a more narrow band of interest perhaps. Double check, no chat. I actually do have my chat on a different screen, but it doesn't refresh reliably, so I do occasionally check, and I welcome questions during this. I will try to respond to them, but sometimes I get distracted and don't. Okay. Anything else I should mention in my intro here? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so I'll start diving into the main meat of this. So last time I did one of these presentations, educational presentations on Arweave, I talked about the sort of intrinsic or foundational properties of Arweave as a data storage and processing system. In this video, I want to specifically talk about some of the things I think that enables and I think are impossible to build in an open at scale way on the web as it is right now. So I want to start off with a little bit of definition review. I defined most of these things in the previous video, but for those who haven't seen that, I would suggest if you're watching this, go back and watch that at some point, but I acknowledge that some people won't. So I'll review the ones that are most important for this video. So really simple, what's a value, right? A value is an immutable piece of information. A reference is a sequence of values through time. So in the previous video, I used the analogy or the example of a game. So if you're playing a board game, you can think of the game, the whole game, as a reference, and then the game states as values. So you start in some state, you go to another state. Each state that you go through, you're making moves on the board. Each one of those states in its entirety is a value, and then the reference is a way to refer to the progression of values through time as you play the game. Lots of other examples you could use too, but that's, I think, one that's fairly easy to think about and most people can relate to. Data addressability, another important concept. So data addressability is the ability to locate values by identifier. This is something we don't have right now in the web as it currently stands. What we locate is, we can look up locations. So all the data you have is out there on some server. And when you resolve something like a domain, like google.com or wikipedia.com or whatever, or .org, sorry. What you're doing is looking up the servers that are backing that, and then they give you the content. And, that works pretty well. It scales well, that looking up by location. But it doesn't give you any purchase on the data over time. You can't say, give me this Wikipedia page on this particular day 5 years ago and expect to get an answer unless someone is going to extraordinary lengths, like cool organizations like the Internet Archive are, to preserve that. There's no property of the system that intrinsically gives you that. Arweave does have data addressability built into it, and that's important. Identity/provenance, those words mean lots of different things in lots of different contexts, but in the context of a blockchain, specifically Arweave, All I mean is that all the content that goes into the system has cryptographic identities associated with them. Doesn't necessarily mean they're a person, doesn't mean you know who they are, but there is some notion of identity going associated with all data going into the system. So that's identity provenance. And then the last one, which is a new one, which I'm adding into this video, is just the term permaweb. And that's just a way to refer to a web-like thing. So like the existing web that we have, but permanent and based on Arweave. Or I suppose based on, some other hypothetical thing in case if Arweave were to falter for some reason. Though let's not go there. Let's keep Arweave working as best we can. So yeah, the permaweb is the permanent web, and it has all these other properties I mentioned above. Okay, so now getting into the main meat of this this presentation. I want to talk about a few things that are very relevant for tools of thought that I do not think you can do in an open way at scale without a permaweb or the permaweb. So the first is annotations. So what do I mean when I say annotations? So an annotation is just attaching your notes, your data, to someone else's content. So this is a thing, a lot of these things, I hope in the tools for thought space, like people know what I'm talking about with these concepts, but I imagine a significant number of people out there just never really think that this, it just doesn't exist. Why would you even think about doing this? But it's unfortunate that we can't just write notes on web pages. So if you're on Wikipedia, for example, you see something on there, you want to write some notes on it, preserve it. You can't really do that in an open way right now. Now, there are tools, like I think Hypothesis is one of them. There are tools that let you do this right now, but over time, almost all those tools disappear, and there's a reason for that. So let's talk about what the permaweb adds to this picture. So I think to do this in an open, scalable way, you need permanence. You need that so that annotations can persist and remain attached to something. If, when you create annotations, they're not permanent, the service can go away, you can lose your annotations. At the same time, if you're attaching them to data that's not permanent, the data can go away, and you can lose what your annotations are attached to. Now, the alternative is you copy the data, and you're actually attaching your annotations to a copy, but that's less valuable. The service that has the copy could go away, and no one else, you lose the ability for other people to refer to the same thing that your annotations are attached to, unless they're also in that service. And then, it's just the same problem. The service can go away, and then you lose that attachment of the annotation to the content and the annotation itself. The other thing is values. So you need immutable values so that annotations remain attached to the same thing. If you attach an annotation to a page and the page changes, your annotation loses the context it was in. It might even lose the literal piece of information it was attached to in the page. Someone might delete a paragraph, and now your annotation makes no sense and can't refer to a real place in the data. So in order for your annotations to retain their fidelity, you need values so that they can refer to immutable things. And then the last thing, which I've implied already, but you need data addressability. If what you're relying on is people running servers for you in a way where where there's not an incentive built into the overall system for them to run those servers, then your annotations can be lost. They're not preserved. You're just attaching them to server locations. So data addressability is fundamental for this to work too. And again, this is not meant to say the existing services are bad. They're the best we can do. But if we really want to do this in an open, scalable way, immutability, permanence, data addressability All these things are prerequisites to doing it in an open, scalable way. If you have a system where you have incentives for all these things baked into the system, you can do this. Optionally, references also add a ton of value to this. So if you have some sort of identity, I should not say identity because that's so overloaded in this context, but if you have something out there, I guess let's just stick with the game example, right? Like say you have some sort of system for recording chess games. I mean, this exists right now, but say you have that out there and it's just posting data to the permaweb. It's useful to have all the references that are attached to game states, or I'm sorry, all the annotations that are attached to game states associated with a reference to the game. I don't think this is essential. Like, as long as you can attach annotations as values to values, you already get a ton of value out of the system. But I think it's just a natural outcome that if you have permanence, values, and data addressability, people will build references, and then references can have this really rich history of annotations that they can associate with them. So not essential, but I think once you get the base things for annotations, references fall out. Like, people will just build them because they're useful. All right, hopefully that makes sense. I will double check my my chat just to see if there's any questions. No questions. So I will go on to the next example. Okay, the next one is, oh, did I not close? I did not. Hang on, let me actually close Slack. I didn't read that message. Might be something to blur afterwards. We'll see. Okay. Transclusion. So, what is transclusion? So, transclusion in the Tools for Thought community, I think those people know this, but broader, maybe not. So, it's embedding part of a page or piece of content, an excerpt of a piece of content, in another page without copying. So right now, what we typically do when we want to refer to something somewhere else is we'll either just link to it and really hope wherever we're linking to doesn't change, or we'll copy it, or we'll copy it and link to it. But what we don't do is get an address for a part of a page and use that to refer to the content from the page. There are some exceptions, right? Like, we do this with videos, things like that. But like a simple example would be, I have a personal blog. Like, if I don't currently, but if I did have a personal blog and I wanted to get an excerpt from someone else's personal blog, and we're just hosting them on random hosting services, I'm just going to copy and refer to it. I'm not going to say, here's the address within the other person's blog of exactly the quote I want to pull out. Doing the address thing to include it would be transclusion. Doing the copying thing is not. Okay, I think given the annotations example I gave, I think it should be pretty obvious already why this can't work right now. Someone could be changing that page. The page could go away. Stuff is just going to break all over the place. The exceptions to this right now, where we do things like embed videos, are heavily reliant on these central entities like Google, who owns YouTube, maintain these things over time. And I think it's great that they do. Like, YouTube, I think, is one of the, all these things have problems, but it's one of the most powerful educational tools that we have currently. So it's phenomenal that we have them. But I think we can do a lot better if we shift things so that all the content is permanent. Then we can do this for everything. You can just, start embedding stuff from random places on the internet, Wikipedia pages. You have no fear of it changing. So you need permanence so that the page won't go away. You need values so you know that the content won't go away, which would instantly break for transclusion, right? If you had an address of something and the content started changing, like, instantly, that's a problem. And then, again, you need data addressability to embed the location of the data, not the servers, because the server locations change. You need a way to refer to the data itself. So all these things are fundamental for having an open transclusion system on the internet, one that is not reliant on central entities for its continued existence. I think that's clear. I don't think I need to say anything more on that. I'll quick check the comments here. Good on comments. Okay. The last one I want to talk about, and this one gets a little more subtle, is back references. So again, tools for thought, folks. Probably don't need to explain this, but I will for anyone else. So you see I'm using LogSeq. It's one of these newer note-taking tools that has more fancier concepts of hyperlinking and embedding content. And you'll see at the bottom here, one linked reference. So what is this? Let me just go to this page. Thankfully, not much on it. I would want to obscure. So this is a daily note where I have, I say, okay, I was reviewing the notes for this stream. I guess that was prior to the stream. And then I was starting to work on the stream. And I'm not actually a heavy user of like this kind of tool for journaling, but it illustrates the point, right? So this is a page that links to this other page. When I click on this other page, I go there and I see what has linked to it. So back references are a list of inbound links from elsewhere. In the context of LogSeq, some of these other tools, mostly it's within your own notes. But we could imagine doing this for the whole web. And actually, I think Google could do this right now. I've thought about it some. I don't think there's any fundamental reason they couldn't. I don't think, I don't think there's any. They have the indexes. I think it's something they could do if they wanted to, but it's probably somewhat niche. Like people don't even know that this is a thing that you could do. If they released it, most people would probably just be like, what? And not really know what to do with it. I think there's probably some challenges in scaling it with a mutable web, and I have no idea what they would do to monetize it. So there's maybe social economic dynamics that prevent it from really being a thing that's built out now. And of course, we would prefer that these systems be open and not reliant on Google or other, really large, powerful indexing entities to maintain them for us. So I think permanence enables this in a few ways. And I'm still sort of formulating my ideas about what this might look like at scale. But if you have permanence, immutability, and public data, if you make an index, even if it's an incomplete index, right? Like it's not an index of everything, the index never needs updating. Like as long as it is accurate within its own scope, so maybe it's not covering everything, so it covers part of the permaweb. First of all, it's never going to go out of date for what it covers because it covers that thing at a point in time. Second, it can be used by future indexes. So you could either have new indexes that kind of forward to other indexes. You say, okay, I built this new index. It's referring to this new content. Oh, and if you want this old content, you go look at this old index. Or the new indexes could read the old indexes in, or they could directly extend them in some way. So you could imagine like append-only tree structures, which exist and are pretty efficient. I'm still kind of looking into them to sort of see what the bounds of the efficiency and scalability of those are. But there are existing append-only tree structures that are pretty good. So you could imagine just having a big index that gets extended over time. And the key thing is these indexes can all refer to each other safely because you know that nothing is going to change out from under these indexes. Nothing's deleted. Nothing is updated. Once the indexes are built, things are only added. And that is fundamental to be able to build upon these things over time. The exact mechanisms about how you put it all together, still a little bit of an open question in my mind. And of course, data addressability is one of those things that's really foundational to this too. If what you're indexing is places, really only the big entities that are scraping the system regularly could do this right now. If you have data addressability, lots of people can index little parts of the thing and it's fine. Like you don't have to worry about it breaking. You don't have to re-index it all the time. And the lack of needing to re-index the old stuff all the time, I think is really the key to getting a flywheel going that lets you build these things and maintain them at scale. So this one is still one that's kind of being built out in my head a little bit. But I hope that gives you a flavor of why I think it shifts, like a permaweb shifts the dynamic on back references to where we can really start to build this stuff at scale. And, maybe lots of people don't use it, but just being able to incrementally build it and add to it would let a small community of people start building these things out. All right, so that's back references. Checking my questions again. No questions. Okay, so I have a few concrete suggestions for people currently developing tools for thoughts. First of all, if you're getting into this space, it's a little overwhelming. Crypto really is the Wild West. I think the underlying, especially the computer science layer of this stuff, is getting quite good. In other words, you look at these platforms like Arweave. I think the fundamentals are good. There's a few things around the mining algorithm that I think will still improve over time, but the way that the data is stored and sort of the theoretical aspect of it, I do not see fundamental barriers to scaling there. So I think the tech is getting quite good at that level. But this is a very fast-moving place. There's a lot of rough edges. You'll find outdated documentation here or there. And I'm not saying this to put down anyone who's working on Arweave. It's just things are moving really fast. It's hard to keep up on all of it. So yeah, just be aware of that. But I think if you start building on it now, you'll be in a really good place as it matures. Let's see, what else I put in here. Yeah, just not enough documentation, difficult to find libraries. There is really good stuff both on the docs and libraries, but it's just not fully baked. It's a young thing. Like any new technology is like this. It's not the fault of the technology. I'm definitely not saying this to say anything bad about anyone working on this. It's just takes a lot of work. Also, if you're new to this space, as far as I know, Arweave, I say as far as I know because it's changing rapidly. Someone might have started up a project yesterday I don't know about. As far as I know, Arweave is the only crypto storage protocol that has these properties. It's the only one that really has permanence. And I think that is fundamental to making this work. So, don't take my word for it, but if someone is talking about something else being permanent, really look and check and make sure it is permanent. And do the same for Arweave too. Don't just take my word for it. But as far as I know, Arweave is the only thing that is really doing permanence, and that I think is fundamental to some of this stuff working. It doesn't mean there's not value in the other things, but if permanence is the thing you're after, I believe Arweave is the only one doing permanent storage at scale. Okay, so a couple sort of caveats there at the beginning. Okay, I have some really simple and easy to implement recommendations. So if you are a tool for thought and you want to start dipping your toe into this, there is an extremely simple thing you can do that will both provide value to your users, allow you to start interacting with the Arweave space, and should be easy to implement. And that is just implement Arweave URLs. So that's AR:// a transaction ID, and support configurable gateways. So the gateway is the thing that takes that and looks it up in the system. So you don't want to be coupled to a single gateway. Right now, there's one main one that is run by the Arweave team, but in the future, I think there will be more. So you don't want to be coupled together. And the translation for that is just this. Your AR:// transaction ID turns into, I won't read it out, but it's just this URL transaction ID. That is it. That will download the content for a particular transaction. What this will do is it will let people use existing Arweave tools like ArDrive, which is just I hate saying this because it downplays the significance of it, but it's like, imagine a permanent Google Drive or Dropbox. That's what ArDrive is. It will let people who use these existing Arweave tools to upload things permanently and publicly and refer to them using identifiers that resolve to data as opposed to server locations. So you can start getting a flywheel going of people using public data and referring to it using an identifier that resolves to the data. This should be really easy to implement. If you're the first tool to implement this, I guarantee you'll get a lot of love from the Arweave community. It'll sort of let you dip your toes in the water, get your user community exposed to this a little bit, and you'll be able to see sort of, am I too early? What's the feedback here? It seems really low cost and like a low risk thing to do. And maybe what you end up deciding is like, okay, yeah, maybe it is still too early. I'll delay that and just keep watching the space. Fine decision. Everyone has to make their own decisions about the timing. Timing in startups is very tricky. Okay, the next thing, if you find this is valuable and you want to keep going, but maybe you're not yet in the place where you want to start posting your content from your tool to Arweave, the next thing you could do is work on URL standards for addressing parts of content on Arweave for embedding and transclusion purposes. So actually, I didn't think about demoing this, but let me see here. So if I remember correctly, yeah, so RConnect, which is a wallet for Arweave, will let you archive pages. So you can archive web pages currently to Arweave. So this is maybe where the use case for this comes in. So you could archive a page. Now it's permanently on Arweave, and you could have a URL standard of some sort, or is it URI? I don't know. I always get those confused. I should clarify that. That refers to part of the page. So now you have permanent content. You can refer to part of the page, and you could have a facility for embedding that, and doing transclusion with it. So again, all you have to do this is come up with a standard for referring to things, and then just use regular HTTP to pull that content off of Arweave through a gateway and display it in your tool. You don't have to do anything cryptographic on your side. The tools for uploading the content, getting the content into Arweave already exist. So again, it's more work than the first thing. This thing, not to do the product manager thing, but like this is less than a day of work if you want to do this. Certainly if you want to do it in the non-programmable way or the non-configurable way with configurable gateways, I hope everyone can do this very quickly. This one takes more work. You probably want to give some thought to the URL standards. You're kind of committing to something going forward. But again, you don't have to upload any content or interact with wallets or doing anything fancy like that to get this part going either. So that's homework for Tools for Thought people if you're interested in getting involved in this. I will argue that if you are building an open tool for thought, this is a competitive advantage. Other tools, I think, if Arweave goes well, will eventually need to adopt Arweave to compete. I don't know if it gives you a moat to adopt Arweave, because in some ways I think it just makes the landscape more competitive. But over time, I think public, permanent, immutable data shifts the game. It really changes the competitive dynamics from, I'm going to try to amass data centrally, and that's going to be my moat, to, I am suddenly not participating in this composable ecosystem of immutable data. So if I am right about this, I think you would do well to get in early so that you can participate in that that data, combinatorial data explosion that may happen on top of Arweave. The last point is just more of an implementation thing. So I see a lot of folks in Tools for Thought space focusing on graph databases, and that is cool. Like, graph databases are excellent tools for building, but I believe at scale, permanence is actually the important thing that enables scalable Tools for Thought. There will be a graph, but it will be based on permanent data referring to other permanent data. And you may use graph databases as an indexing tool, but I think the foundation will just be data. And for the open graphs, the important thing to focus on, certainly you need the indexing to do your interactive tools, etc. But the really important thing to focus on will be the data formats and the URL standards. That's the thing that will win out in the long term, and tools that are built on top of that, I think, will come and go. I think a place to look for data formats is look at the stuff the semantic web folks have done. Not all of it, and some of it is, totally overwrought, but there's a lot of effort that has been put into thinking about how to structure data. And it doesn't mean you have to do the same thing, but I think you would be very foolish to ignore the decades of research that have gone into that space. So look at that. I would just hand wave it like JSON, LD, things like that, to maybe get some ideas for data formats that you might want for publishing. Again, some people I think have gone a little off the deep end in the semantic web space and talking about ontologies and all that stuff, but maybe not too. I don't know. Maybe I'm being dismissive, but there's a lot of research there, and I'm pretty sure some of it is bound to be good and thought-provoking, even if you don't use it directly. All right, so I will wrap up there. I hope that's been interesting for folks and gives people some inspiration who are building tools for thought. Before I wrap up, I'll just check my questions. I see no questions. So yeah, that's really all I wanted to say in the educational portion of this. I hope that's been interesting and gives some people inspiration. And I guess briefly I'll mention, the thing I have in mind to do for the next educational video is the information representation power of Arweave. So that will build on some of the ideas from this video and the previous one talking about the foundational properties of Arweave, and just talk about what does all of this bias purely in terms of representation power. So yeah, that's a little teaser for the next one. And that is it for the initial portion here. Okay, a little pause there so I can cut when I edit this. I think I'll end up turning this into 2 separate videos, or maybe 3, like a long cut and 2 smaller ones. I can do the this part and then the suggestions for tools for thought developers as separate videos, because smaller videos are good for entry points on YouTube. Okay, let me collect my thoughts here. It's always tricky when you do the intro educational videos, get pretty focused on that, and now I have to shift gears to doing some coding. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, let's dive into the code here. So last time we did this coding thing, what did we do? So we got the blocks queryable via SQL and Metabase, and played around some with functions to transform the data. And I believe the place I left off, you can tell I prepare less for the coding portion of this, but I believe the place I left off was with some to-do items around writing functions to transform the data. So I guess I'll cover that first. So I wrote a couple query functions. Oh yeah, that is one of the things we ran into. So the math, you could probably get the math to do like inflation calculations for Arweave. You could probably get it all working in the SQL, but it just seemed like it's more painful in the SQL, so why not just do it in Clojure? So I wrote an inflation function, which is actually just code I copied from somewhere else, tweaked a little bit. So this calculates the per block inflation, the inflation at a given height, and so that's the incentive on top of transactions for miners to do their mining thing on Arweave. And then the other one I did, which is just internal thing for my data format here, is to write a function that flattens the transaction tag summary. So what it takes is a map that looks like tag name and then count 1, 2, 3. What else is in there? I'm not going to type all these out, but just to give you an idea, total reward 4, 5, 6, ... So it's basically aggregate stats on a per tag name basis. So that is what the flattened tags TX tag summary does, and then I'll show you how we use these in our query over here. So inflation. Yeah, let me by the way, I'm now operating in NeoVim, so instead of seeing me fumble around transitioning because I'm in Emacs, now you get to see the other side. I'm still getting rid of some of the Emacs mappings in my head in NeoVim land, but it's been good. I like it. And I'll just give former coworker Ollie Caldwell shout out. He writes Conure for to Clojure extension for NeoVim, and it's great. If you're using NeoVim and doing Clojure, it's the way to go. And if you do that, please sponsor him on GitHub. It's important that we sponsor open source projects that we use. So, yeah. So the inflation function. So yeah, this is just doing XTDB. I think both Datomic and XTDB have the same syntax for this stuff. It's just some of the syntax actually isn't stuff I've used before. So we have the function call here. So this is going to call the query function's inflation. You have to refer to it using the full qualified name. Although sometimes it coincidentally works if you don't do that, but I'm not sure exactly what the circumstances are in which that happens, but you're supposed to refer to it by the fully qualified name, passing in the height, which is already bound up here, and then the value coming out of that is bound to inflation here. And we're returning that here and down here. So inflation, don't know why I'm putting new lines in there, and inflation. Okay, so that is the inflation function. A little more complex. So I added a new table. That's the blocks table. I added a blocks tags table, and it's mostly duplicate with some things added. I think ultimately I'm going to take out the duplication and do joins, because I think when you do a join in SQL, it gets boiled down to an XTDB data log join, which should be equivalently optimal. But just for sort of simplicity, initially, I did not do that. I just did basically the same thing, and I sort of realized the whole join of the blocks to the block tags within this single table. So most of this is repeat. We have the inflation, and then down here, I'm calling this query function flatten tx tags summary, which takes the tag summary bound here, and it spits out a sequence of tag name to the properties, the totals, rolled up totals for that tag. So, and remember the tag names are all stored base64 URL encoded. So we spit that out as tag name. I guess I actually don't need the underscores there. I could change this one, but we spit that out as tag name base64u, and then we bind all these other things like the tag count, the total reward, etc. And then down here we take the base64 URL encoded tag and turn it into UTF-8 and spit that out as tag name. And I should mention, since I talked about the underscores, I went through and changed all the names of things that were spitting out via SQL to use underscores, which is not idiomatic in Clojure, but it is in SQL. And since this thing is primarily here just to describe the SQL interface to this, I want it to look like I would expect in SQL, and it makes quoting. You don't have to quote as much stuff if you do it this way. So I think that covers the bulk of what I did since last time. Let me think about that for a second. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that covers it. So, given this, we should be able to run some fun queries. Now, I realized just prior to doing this that there was something I needed to tweak. So we'll see if it runs. We might have to do a little bit of debugging here, but we'll find out. Apologies if you can hear the background noise. My kids are off school today, so there's a little extra excitement in the house. All right, so it's running. So I think I did resolve my actual little deployment snafu there. Okay, let's check real quick. Oh, I think if I run the other one, it will time out. Let's try it. Let me run this one. This one, it's going to try to, I think the way that XTDB evaluates SQL, it may try to realize the full result set before returning the results if you don't have any like where conditions on it. So I think this query will actually time out, but that's fine. I'll switch to SQL and start to restrict it here in a second. This is just to sort of check the plug and make sure this is executing it all, which it is, but I'll still just wait for it to time out. And take a drink of coffee while I do. Taking slightly longer than I thought. I guess a minute is pretty long when you're live streaming. I'll just go ahead and switch to writing some SQL. All right, so I wrote down a few queries I think would be fun to do. Let's check. Let's see, currently, I guess let's do this. So let's select the max height from blocks, just see how up to date we are. I think it should be keeping up to date. It's been running pretty reliably. Okay, 795.381, and what are we at here? 795.381. Cool. So we are essentially up to date. Yeah, it's been this current schema structure I use, I think, is working pretty well in terms of like the reliability of this whole thing. Okay, so I think a fun thing to do would be, first of all, let's do where height. So we're just going to limit our query a bit so that it executes faster and we can run some queries against tags. So we'll take this and let's just do that. So that's another 0 there. So what is that? It's over a day's worth of data. So let's try that. Let's do counts, just see if we're missing stuff, because we might be. Does that look about right? Yeah, actually that looks exactly right. So cool, we're not missing any blocks. Okay, so let's do this. So this is going to get us the, what does this get us? So this is going to get us the, oh, it's kind of hard to describe in words. So for each block, this gets the distinct tag names, and then it's going to count up those distinct tag names per block. So it's not distinct tag names over the whole sequence. It's like, it's kind of a weird, it doesn't really make sense, but we'll run it to see what number we get out of it. Uh-oh. What does it say here? Oh, it's because I named this wrong. Blocks tags should be block tags. Okay, so 26,000, interesting. So let's modify this and do count distinct tag names. So this will give us the count of distinct tag names within that time frame. And you know what? Let's, just so we are always using the same, let's do this. Height less than, and we'll just, I'll do less than equals actually. We'll just do this. Okay, so this gives us a defined set of blocks to deal with, so things aren't shifting under our feet. Not critical, but I think it's just a little, brings a little more sanity to the exercise here. All right, 201. Okay, so that is a small enough set that we could just show them. Let's do this. So let's take. We'll do the. No, we'll do the. No, I'll go with what I was going to do. So let's do this. Apologies for background noise there. I think there's some drama going on. I will return in just a second. I should probably check on this. All right. Sorry about that. I'm back. Nothing catastrophic. Okay, so let's run this. This will give us the. What will this give us? Yeah. Well, I'll go ahead and run it. It's not really going to tell me what I. It's going to give a weird value again, but let's run it. So it's going to give like the count. It's basically going to say the count of blocks that have a particular tag. So how many blocks did a tag with this name show up in? I think. Yeah, pretty sure that's right because it's distinct per block, and then count of each one of these will basically be a count of the blocks. So that's interesting. It's the same thing the query. Oh, I got a group by. Sorry. It's the same thing the query. I don't know how much I care about that particular stat, but it's interesting. That could turn into an interesting report. Sorry, talking and typing at the same time, not always good. There we go. So this one takes a bit. I guess the last one did too. Not too bad. What I anticipate is we should add an order by. So let's do. So I think it's kind of interesting to order by to descending. So that's going to order by the second field descending. Okay. So this will give us the ones that have the highest count at the top. So the tags that appear in the ETH smart contract address. Interesting. So the things that appear in the most blocks will be the top. Okay, so unsurprisingly, we have some very generic stuff at the top, like content type, IPFS add, content encoding, app, version, timestamp. Yeah, fun stuff. Okay, so this gives us the count of blocks. It would also be interesting to get the actual count of how many times the tag is used. So for that, we can start digging into the rolled up tag data. So this would be tag count. So we do a sum of tag count, and that's going to take the rolled up sum value for each tag name per block and sum all of those. And so this gives us the actual number of times a tag with that name is used. Probably, I was thinking this, I don't think I actually said it yet. Probably what will happen is as I develop useful queries here, they'll either get baked into the schema by either processes that run in the background and run these queries and then create documents that encode the results of the queries into the database, or I'll have transaction functions that like compute these things on the fly. So the transaction functions might be interesting. That might make for an interesting future stream too, to explore that. And probably also another thing that will happen is some of these join conditions and filters will get turned into XCDB rules, and I'll have multiple different top level SQL tables that are based on rules that I've written on the XCDB side, because the compositionality of data log queries is just so much better than SQL. But SQL is, sort of the lingua franca of data querying. Okay, so it's pretty similar. Some things do seem like they might be bubbling up a little higher here. A lot of bundle transactions, not surprising. These are interesting. I don't know what those are. These will all be fun things to dig into over time. Exchange, maybe Verto stuff here. Verto. Again, that Holoplex. This is all. I think this is NFT stuff, maybe from Solana, maybe? Solana pub key, yeah. I think there might be a couple different Solana NFT platforms. Interesting that they still exist like this. I would hope that most of the NFT things are going into bundles now. I think probably most of them are, but I guess maybe a few still remain. Pool. Well, I shouldn't spend too much time speculating on what all these are. Suffice it to say, it's an interesting collection. Oh, do we have any Arweave stuff in here? Arweave. Oops. Sorry. I guess the Control F doesn't do what I would hope there. Yeah, RFS. So that's pretty high up there. Drive ID. These are all Arweave things. Cool. Okay. So, another super fun thing we could do now. Let's see. What do they call that? So let me save this. We'll just save this as tag name counts, so I can come back to some of these later. I mean, they're not super complicated queries, but nice not to have to rewrite them. Okay, tag name counts. Save that one. No, not now. Don't care about adding it to dashboard. Okay, so I'll just keep going on the same name, and when I change it, save the next one, I'll rename it, in case that bothers anyone who's watching this. Okay, so it is just about the top of the hour now, so I should mention again that the Open Web Foundry is going on, and I totally should have dropped a link to that in the chat. I will do that now. Also check my chat to see if anyone's said anything of can't tell if I'm actually highlighting that. So anyway, if you're building stuff on Arweave, or interested in getting involved in the Arweave community, go check out the Open Web Foundry going on now, or check it out afterwards too. I think they are all recorded and end up on YouTube on the Arweave channel. But there's sometimes question and answer type things that would be fun to participate in live. So if that's of interest to you, go there. If not, hang on and we'll do a bit more querying here. There's a couple other queries I think would be interesting to look at. Okay. Right, we're gonna look at the storage per tag. So let me go back over here. Let's do, I was looking over here to get the total size, total data size. So total data size. I wonder if I should have called that. Yeah, I should make it to do. This should be total. Include tag name in, or include tag, not tag name, tag in total data size. Good enough. I just want to make sure these things, total data size could refer to a bunch of different things. So I want to make sure it is specific to tags. But we use the schema we currently have. Okay, so total data size. I would guess this is dominated by bundles, maybe followed by Arweave. We'll see. One thing I might try to do before the next coding video, at least, is make some cool visualizations for these, and then we could spend some time looking at those. Action. What is... I don't know what action is. It could be... I would think it's probably a bundle thing. Certainly... Yeah, that's interesting. Actions at the top. Certainly these two are bundles, so it's not, you know... Looks like the top thing here is bundles. I am really curious what those action transactions are. What else is going on here? So you got app name, app version. That's not surprising. Like a lot of things are going to be IPFS add. Interesting. Yeah, some people must be pinning a lot of IPFS content. NFTs. Yeah, NFTs are just a huge user of space right now. Exchange. Where is... Scarcity. Maybe another NFT thing? One thing that's interesting, it could just be the time frame I'm looking at. I would have thought that our drive would be higher, but maybe not. I mean, there's just a ton of NFT data, and there's an increasingly diverse set of things uploading to Arweave. So, guess it's not. No, there it is. It's relatively high, but not super high. I mean, probably varies a lot. It's probably lumpier than some of the other ones. The bundles dominate, though. It could be that some R drive stuff is also going into bundles now, which kind of is a bummer for querying the data, but is good for scalability for Arweave, so I won't complain too much. Okay. So another thing we could look at, let me look at, is just smart contract activity. So, and this is something that I think for a while is definitely going to stay on the function transfer. I may need to look at view block Arweave. Might be a little tricky to track this down. I think contract. I think they have contract in the tag name. I just forget. I haven't done the SmartWeave smart contract stuff. Is something that is still in the future on the project I'm working on, so I haven't interacted with it a lot directly yet. Let's do tag name equals contract. I guess let's just do like contract. Oh man. Yes. My brain was failing me there for a second with the SQL wildcard. Okay, let's just do a count on that. So data size isn't that interesting for smart contracts. So this should give us, assuming I got the tag name right, it should give us something interesting. Yeah, contract source. I think contract source. I'm trying to think what this actually gets us. So I think. Let me Google. Or sorry, not Google. I'll search the code here. So contract source should be in here. Here we go. Contract create. Contract load. What I want to see is the interactions. Interaction TX. Oh, that's just an interface. SmartWeave global. What I want to see is what tags get associated with a smart contract when you interact with it. Interact write, interact read. Okay, so let's do that. Let's look at write, interact, write. Where do those get imported from? Let's find out. Interact, write. Contract, interact. Okay. There we go. Might be create TX. Where's create TX? Okay. Contract. Yeah, I think contract is the thing that is more accurate. I think. We'll go with that. It seems like, it looks to me like interactions always have contract attached. So let's go with that. So we'll say contract. I'm going to tag name. And in theory, I can extract the actual values for these tags, but I have to dig into. I have to sort of query the original source data for the transaction. So it's more like query functions that I would need to do, and that's not something I would want to do a lot on the fly because it's going to be pretty expensive computationally in terms of like pulling data out. Or relatively. I mean, the data size still is not crazy for the layer 1 stuff. Okay, so 220. Let's do a longer time window. So let's say, I don't know what we're averaging right now. I guess I could use timestamps. I don't want to try to figure out the timestamp functions on the video though. So let's do this. So this is, oh, wait, I'm doing this the wrong direction, aren't I? Let's do, just want sort of a defined number here. So let's say 5,000. Yeah. So looking at 5,000 blocks, what number do we get out? I guess I don't even need to be grouping by tag name since I'm oops, I shouldn't do like either. I should do equals now. I'll change that in a second. Should amount to the same thing without wildcards, I think, but okay, so now we can do something like this, where we say the count over 5,000, and that gives us the fraction of blocks that have SmartWeave interactions. Oh, is that doing some kind of, must be rounding? Can I do, that. Will that give me a good answer? This is getting into calcite SQL things, which I'm not. It's a SQL dialect I'm not super familiar with yet. And I don't know to what extent the semantics of it are defined by calcite versus defined by XTDB underneath. So, okay, so roughly a quarter of blocks have SmartWeave interactions, so it's interesting. What else could we do? I'm going to wrap up pretty soon here, but I think we can do a couple more interesting queries. So, yeah, we should be able to take this. Let's see, so when we do, let's do this, tag count. And then over here, we can do a sum of, yeah, we don't need to group by. We've only got one tag we're looking at. So let's just get rid of all of that. It bugs me that that's uppercase. I'll do lowercase there. Okay, so we're going to do count. No, I want to do a sum of tag count. So that gives me the distinct number of times, or the count of the number of times this tag is in transactions, which is not necessarily the transaction count, because I think you could have it repeated, but close enough. And then we could do the sum of what is it? It's the TX count, the sum of the TX count. So this gives us the percentage of, or the percentage of transactions that are SmartWeave related, which should be lower. I mean, a lot of them are just going to be data or something. I really have no idea what this number is. The blocks makes quite a bit of sense to me. The transaction ratio, I don't know. Zero. Okay. Let's see. How can I do something stupid like this? I think there's probably a function, but I'm just trying to minimal effort here to get the thing working. There should be a cast function I can use, like a type coercion, which I may have to look up here in a second, but we'll give this a try first. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so about 2.5% of the transactions are SmartWeave. It would be an interesting thing to plot over time. I would expect that over time, a lot of the data moves into bundles, and these SmartWeave transactions and things like that would take up more of the layer 1 space until they move into bundles too. But I think that's you really want to have a lot of things pinned down and figured out pretty well, I think, before you move SmartWeave transactions into bundles, because you need to have good guarantees about like ordering, data availability, all that stuff. And I don't see a strong reason to do that until later, probably. Although who knows? Like, other people may have reasons they want to do it sooner. I don't know. It seems a little dicey to me at this point. Okay. Okay, so one other one. So I added that inflation. So now we actually have the per block inflation. And what we could do is do a plot of the inflation versus the amount, the transaction fees. So that's basically like block. Yeah, we can normalize it by the total. No, we don't want to normalize it by the total. Sorry, thinking out loud here. What I want to look at is what percentage of the reward comes from inflation versus people paying for data. I think that's an interesting thing to look at. Or that's even the wrong way to describe it. It's not the percentage of the reward, because the percentage of the reward is the reward is only 20% of the fees. What I really want to do is look at the total fees versus inflation. Yeah. So let's do sum of inflation versus sum of 5 times total TX reward. And it's 5 because the transaction reward, remember, is only, I just can't stand the combination of uppercase total. TX, I should just type the whole thing out. The transaction reward is 20% of the total amount paid. 20% goes to miners right away, and then the other 80% goes to goes into the endowment to pay for the storage in the future. Don't want the tag name there, and we want to do this on blocks. Okay, so we'll stick with our restricted time frame here. I think what I actually want to do is like look at this every, I don't know, we could look at it every 1,000 blocks or something, but we'll just do sum over that entire time period to start out with. What are you telling me here? Inflation. I'm inventing words. Inflation. Oops, sorry. All right, what's this going to give us? Let me not do the division. That's actually, let me just do both numbers. Okay, hard to look at numbers. Let's do this. Sum. How do we want to do this? I want to look at this number, so we'll do sum of that. Put parentheses around this. Yeah, I can get rid of these parentheses. I do not need that. And remember, the 1.0s are just to get everything decimalified, which may not be necessary in this case because it. Let's just take it out. Let's see what happens if I take it out. It might all collapse on me, or it might not. I'll just put it back if it does. Just for kicks, see what it does with that in there. Really? What do you dislike about that? Wow, what's it complaining about there? Oh, I must have just run it before I finished. Okay, so same thing. So let's just get rid of this. We don't need that. I will leave that one parenthesis in because the order requires it. Yeah, so this is saying that comparing yeah, I'm trying to think what quantity, if this really is a quantity that makes sense to talk about or not. I think sort of not. So you can think of sort of the inflation and the total amount paid as the amount of economic juice going into the system here. We have people paying for data, and then we have the inflation. I don't know that it makes sense, how much sense it makes to look at this ratio, because only 20% of that is going to miners. I need to think through more what is useful, like which of these ratios are useful to think about. One thing we could do is just simplify this, and I think this is sort of interesting quantity. So if you say the inflation is just sort of the it's a built-in incentive for mining. It's like a mining bonus to secure the network, and then the total amount going into the thing is really the long-term fuel for the network. So you can look at that and you can say like how much of. So we're at 20% of inflation right now, which I think is pretty good, honestly. Now of that, 20% of that is going to miners. So this number is going to be, what is that? Yeah, 4%, or 4.3. So that number is much smaller. But the mechanism for rewarding miners is such that if at some point there's not enough coming out of, and this is very far in the future, if there's not enough coming out of the inflation to pay for the replication of the data, that the endowment pool that people are paying into now is drawn upon. But what will likely happen is that the real value of the inflation continues to go up, and probably an endowment pool won't need to be drawn on for a long time into the future. But I think it's clearly good for network sustainability if a lot of the total economic input that's fueling miners is actually coming from transactions. That's a good thing. I think it's a really healthy indicator of adoption. So I need to think through more, which of these make sense, and sort of, how to plot these and think about the ones that are really important to monitor. But I think the overall takeaway here is, there's a lot of real activity that's not just driven by the inflation happening on the network right now, and that's great. And I just need to pin down, which of these are sort of critical to think about, and in what context. But I think it looks like healthy indicators for the Arweave network, so that's cool. I think I'll wrap up there. So I'm tentatively planning, you can just watch my Twitter stream, but I'm tentatively planning on taking next week off from streaming and then resuming the following week. I don't know if that will be just coding or a combination of, the educational content. That sounds weird. I need a better term for that. I'll keep thinking about it. Whatever, the Arweave educational content and streaming it. And code streaming. It may be just code streaming or maybe both. We'll see. It just depends on how well baked my ideas are by that time and how much time I want to spend on it. So that was it for this stream. Thanks for joining. I hope this has all been interesting. And I'll see you all, or I guess not really see you all, but I'll be back on in a couple weeks. Talk to you then.